All right, so today we're going to talk about composition functions. So we're going to determine the domain of a composition, and we're going to find the composition of functions. It's f of g of x, or g of f of x is what we really work with normally. Now, if I say f of g of x, okay, that means I'm plugging the second one into the first one. So I'm plugging g into f. All right. So example says let f of x equal 2x and g of x equal x squared. Find g of f of x. Then find g of f of 2. So g of f of x means that I'm going to do g of f of x. So I'm taking f of x and I'm plugging it in for the x and g of x. So I take that 2x, I plug it in for the x and x squared, and I square it. 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared. So g of f of x is equal to 4x squared. Now, if I want to find g of f of 2, there's two ways to do this. The first way is you can find f of 2, which is going to be 2 times 2, which is 4, right? That means I'm plugging 2 in for the x and every x I see in f of x. And then I take my answer and I plug it into g of x. So now I'm going to say g of 4 equals 4 squared, which is 16. That's my final answer. Or you can take what we got, g of f of x, which is 4x squared, and plug in 2 and get the same answer. So that's the nice thing about composite functions is you can do one individually and then plug it into the other one, or you can go ahead and combine them and then just plug in the number by itself to the combined function, the composite function that you have. All right, so it says find f of g of x. So again, I'm going to take g of x and plug it into f of x. So every time I see an x, I'm plugging in 4 minus x squared. And yes, you plug in the whole thing. So then I'm just going to simplify it. I combine the 2 and the 4 to get negative x squared plus 6. All right. So now using the same two functions, let's go the other way. We're going to plug f of x into g of x. So every time I see an x, I'm going to plug in x plus 2 in g of x. I have to FOIL here, so I'm going to get x squared plus 4x plus 4. I'm going to apply that negative to everything. So when I do that, I get negative x squared minus 4x, and then my 4's cancel. So that's my answer. Now f of g of 6, right? We've already found f of g. We know it's negative x squared plus 6. So I can just plug in my 6 there. And solve it. So I end up with negative 30. So negative, and I plugged in x squared plus 6. So I plugged in 6 for that x, squared it, and applied the negative, and then added 6 to get negative 30. So, as in general, f of g of x cannot equal g of f of x. Composition is not commutative. Order is important, right? So, when we compose two functions, we get a new function. We now want to focus on finding the domain of the composite function. So there's some examples here. It says find the composite function f of g of x and its domain. So I'm plugging g into the x and f of x. So I'm going to say 1 over x squared. Now, the domain, right, if I have a fraction, I can't have 0 on the bottom. So I'm going to take whatever's on the bottom of a fraction and set it equal to 0 and solve it. So I'd square root. There's no plus or minus 0, it's just 0, right? So my domain is all real numbers, except x can't be 0. So another way to write this would be negative infinity to 0, union 0 to infinity. Right? I use parentheses because I can't use 0. Okay? Find the composite function g of h of x and its domain. So I'm taking h and I'm plugging it in for g. Square root of x squared just gives me x. Right? If you think about the domain on this one, just x, there are no limitations. My domain is all real numbers, aka negative infinity to infinity. Now, just as an example, I know I don't have one like it, but if you have something like this, okay, your domain is affected by that square root. You can't have negative inside of a square root. So I'm going to say x minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to add 2. I know 2 is going to either be my ending or my start point. Now, plug in a number greater than 2 and a number less than 2. A number less than 2, that would be 1. 1 minus 2 gives me a negative number, which I can't have. So I don't want to go to negative infinity because I can't have a negative number. So I'm going to use 2 to positive infinity as my domain. Okay, again, what I would do on the certify, I would graph my composite function. To find domain. Because remember, domain's far left to far right. So I would graph it to find it. Okay? Some other things you might see on the Hawks, it says find f of g of 1 if f of 2 equals negative 13. That should be negative 2 just by the way. And g of 1 equals negative 2. Well, remember, I can break this into sections, right? I can do g of 1 first, which we know is negative 2. And then I take my answer and I plug it into f of x, which we know is negative 13. So the answer to this problem, they really just gave it to you. It's negative 13. If you follow the order, right, I take my g of x answer, I plug it into f of x. That's how a composite function works. And whatever I get for that is my final answer, which ends up being negative 13. Okay? The other thing they're going to have you do is they're going to have you take a composite function and break it into 2 parts. So they're going to have you break it into those individual parts. So g of x, right, what they're going to do is they're going to give you a fraction. So to break up a fraction, I keep everything the same on top, and the bottom I just put an x. So that's the first part. That's how we're going to break this into sections. Now think about this. What do I need to plug in for this x to make it look like this? Well, I need to plug in negative 5x plus 4, aka the bottom of the fraction. So that's the second part that it's broken into. A lot of people kind of struggle with this one. So I threw this example on here. Remember, the top is going to stay the same. The bottom is just going to become x. Now, what do I need to plug in for x? That's going to be the other function. So these are going to be your 2 answers. They're going to have you type in 2 parts. Those are your 2 answers. Okay? If you guys have any questions over that, please let me know. The certify is 3.6. Again, 3.6 is your homework. Please get that done. Test 2 is going to be here in, we start at February 18th. So, if you haven't done any of the other certifies, you need to make sure you're working on those, all right? Otherwise, have a good day, guys.